And welcome to our next video, our war heroes we're going to be covering now. And to get to this one, you either walk straight down from the traditional crematorium, or if you're coming in from the main gate, you come in, turn right, and you'll come to an area known as Stacey's Circle. But our particular area is square number, let me get my map out, 235. I've got a cemetery map with me, and it's nicely signposted as well for us, this one, with an information board. During the two world wars, Britain became an island fortress, a base for equipping and training troops and launching land and sea and air operations. Britain was also a major centre of military medical care, with many men and women of the armed forces brought here from overseas for treatment in thousands of hospitals across the country, some of whom would never survive. Other surface personnel buried in the United Kingdom were killed or injured while fighting the enemy in the skies above the islands or in coastal waters. The families of those who died in the UK were able to lay their relatives to rest where they wished, unlike men and women lost overseas. Today, more than 170,000 Commonwealth men and women who died whilst serving in the armed forces during the First and Second World Wars are buried in almost 13,000 locations across the country. Some lie in dedicated war cemeteries, others in village churchyards or municipal sites in cities and towns under the commission headstones or markers chosen by their next of kin. Hospital care in London during the First World War. Well before the outbreak of the First World War, the military authorities in Britain were planning medical services for sick and wounded servicemen should a war occur. There were some 150 military hospitals in the United Kingdom prior to the war, with 7,000 beds. In August of 1914, 23 territorial force general hospitals were mobilised, providing an additional 12,000 beds. This was quickly found to be insufficient, and in 1915 the War Office negotiated temporary acquisition of other hospitals, schools and large buildings to increase the supply of beds for patients who were being brought from the front. In 1917 in London alone, there were no less than 26,000 beds for military patients. Cemeteries all over the city received the bodies of those patients who succumbed to their illness and injuries. The City of London Cemetery is the final resting place for men treated at many different hospitals in London and around the United Kingdom, including some located in the city, in Bethnal Green, Mile End, Whitechapel, Brighton and Suffolk. There were two major hospitals in the City of London during the First World War. The City of London Military Hospital, my great-granddad was in there, great-granddad Arthur Price. He was gassed at the Somme on 3 separate occasions, which had accommodation for over 700 patients, and the City of London Red Cross Hospital, which opened in October 1915 in Burkers Hotel, Finsbury Square, with over 100 beds. In March 1915, the Bethnal Green Infirmary was taken over by the London District Command and renamed Bethnal Green War Hospital. It too had over 700 beds and treated thousands of servicemen over the course of the war. These hospitals received wounded and ill servicemen directly from the Western Front via ambulance, train and hospital ship. Most of the men treated would recover, but a small number died, and some of those men are buried here. The majority of the servicemen commemorated here are from the United Kingdom, but there are also Australians, New Zealanders and Canadians, reflecting the great contribution made to the war effort by those countries. In all, there are some 323 service burials from the First World War, many on a screen wall, as their graves cannot be marked individually. Early in the Second World War, the section that had been set aside for service burials was hit by a bomb, but was quickly restored and returfed. Today in this plot, and throughout the cemetery, 400 servicemen and women of the Second World War are commemorated, including 70 who were cremated at the City of London crematorium. And a large sign requesting quiet for the wounded hangs outside Charing Cross Hospital and Agar Street in London, September 1914. Heavy traffic has been diverted to minimise noise in the street. Commonwealth War Graves Commission. The Commission is responsible for the commemoration of almost 100,700 members of the Commonwealth forces who gave their lives in 2 world wars. The graves and memorials of these men and women who came from all parts of the Commonwealth and were of many faiths, and are found around the globe in 153 countries. For more information about Commonwealth War Graves Commission, our work and how to search the records online, visit www.cwwg.org. Inquiries are also welcome at the office of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and that's the details for that there. But we'll now cover over here, because there are lots of names here. So what I'll do, like with my other war memorial, I'll pause for a short while on each one, pause to read them, because there are far too many names for me to read out. Then we'll cover some of the individual graves. This cross of sacrifice is one in design and intention with those who have been set up in France and Belgium and other places throughout the world where our dead of the Great War are laid to rest. Their name liveth forevermore. I'll pause for a short while on each one, and then I'll tell you when I'm moving on, so you can pause to read if you wish to. Moving on now to the next. Moving on now. Moving on. Moving on. Moving on now. Moving on now. Moving on to the next names now. Moving on to our next 2 blocks of names. And moving on now. Moving on to the next sets of names now. Moving on to the next sets of names. To the honoured memory of those sailors and soldiers who gave their lives for their country during the Great War of 1914 to 1918, and who lie buried in this cemetery. You remember, I have to think, before the Second World War, the First World War wasn't called the First World War, it was called the Great War, and was described as the war to end all wars. Sadly it didn't. Moving on to our next set of names now. I'm sorry I can't cover each name individually, but as you can see there are hundreds here and it would take a very long time. So to encompass it in one video, this is about the best way I've found. People can pause to read. Moving on now. Moving on to the next ones. Moving on. Moving on to our next set of names now. Moving on. Moving on. Moving on to the next set now. Moving on. And moving on to our last set of names on this memorial wall. And that's all the names covered on the memorial tablets. And you'll now join me over there at the front row where we cover the individual graves. Now some of these men are buried with their families, so I will just read out the servicemen's names. You can pause to catch the others if you want, because it will take too long elsewise. Corporal Walter George Hopkins, London Rifle Brigade, killed in action 27th of February 1915 in his 27th year. Buried at Ploegstert, Belgium. A good friend and a good soldier. And he's buried with his father, Walter Hopkins, and his mother, Eleanor Augusta. In loving memory of our only son, Frederick Richard Lucas, 2nd Lieutenant, RFC, who was killed whilst flying over Sussex, October the 20th, 1916, aged 18 years. And he's buried with his father, Frederick James Lucas. In loving memory of Rifleman Douglas J. Potts, the eldest son of J.C. and E. Potts, who passed away peacefully from the effects of gas poisoning and exposure in the trenches. June the 20th, 1917, aged 22 years. Poor sod. As I said over there, my nan's dad, Arthur William Price, he was gassed on 3 separate occasions. In the end, they eventually invalided him out. Poor man, his health was ruined for the rest of his life. 231879 Rifleman A.C. Court, City of London Rifles, 10th of May 1917, aged 23. He died for others. He did indeed. And these ones are the Commonwealth War Grave headstones for those who don't know. The family grave of T.J. and E.M. Crosswell, in loving memory of my dear husband, Thomas John Crosswell, dispatch rider, RFC, killed whilst on duty at Hythe in Kent, December the 5th, 1917, aged 28 years. And he's also buried with Sarah Ann Barnes, beloved wife of Robert Barnes, and also Robert Barnes, beloved husband of the above, which I assume are his parents. In affectionate memory of my beloved husband, Captain Albert Stanley Temple, RGA, who died of wounds the 12th of January 1918, aged 31. He died the noblest death that a man can die. The family grave of John A. B. Reed, in loving memory of Thomas Reed, 1/4 Battalion East Regiment, 4th son of the above, wounded at Gaza in March 1917 and died of dysentery at El Arish, December the 29th, 1917, aged 21 years, in honours cause, interred at Masad Military Cemetery in Egypt. And you've got also Florence Reed, eldest daughter of the above, also John Reed, grandson of the above, and also John A.B. Reed, another Commonwealth War gravestone here. 244967 Sapper Philip Owen Harris, Royal Engineers, 6th of May 1918, aged 27 years. In loving memory of Albert Francis King, late of Motor Transport and Army Service Corps, died the 9th of July 1918, aged 22 years. Then you've got his father, Henry Charles King, and then you've got his mother, Emily Ada King, and also an Eleanor Ann King buried in this grave. Lieutenant J.D. Baird, Royal Air Force, 8th of May 1918, aged 20 years. In loving memory of my dear husband, Alfred Ernest Brainsmead, 1st Air Merch RAF, who was killed whilst serving his country on HMS Inflexible, 13th of July 1918, aged 41 years. Then you've also got his son, Arthur Robert, and also wife of the late Alfred Ernest, who is Florence Elizabeth, and also Alfred Charles, son of the above. In loving memory of Lieutenant Francis Beacroft Smith, Military Cross, Royal Naval Division, attached Captain, RFC, age 24, youngest son of C.B. Smith of Glasgow. Accidentally killed in an aeroplane accident 28th of May 1918. Military Cross awarded for conspicuous gallantry during an attack when leading his men, although shot 3 times, he continued with great dash and determination to advance, bayoneting 3 of the enemy, refusing to retire until ordered to do so. The London Gazette. In honours calls, in loving memory of John B. Stickland. Sorry about that, people invariably call me while I'm filming. In loving memory of John B. Strickland, AB, RND, died May the 4th, 1918, aged 20 years. In precious and loving memory of our beloved son, James Alfred Parsons, Jimmy, killed in action in France, 23rd of March 1918, aged 19 years. Also our beloved daughter Beatrice Francis Parsons. Well, sadly a lot of the letters are gone from this one. Oh, that's a shame. Too many of the letters are gone for me to be able to even see a name, I'm afraid. Whoever it was killed in action in Gaza, March the 26th, 1917, aged 27, faithful unto death. And another one, look, Private Frank Henry Young, so we assume that the person above is called Young as well. He was killed in action 1918, aged 21 years. See, once the letters go, it's impossible, unless they were carved underneath, which these weren't, it's impossible to see. 6347, Private R. Scott, 7th Battalion, Australian Infantry, 13th of December 1916, aged 22 years. God be with you till we meet again. Inserted by his loving mother. Because you could choose to have a message from family put at the bottom of the Commonwealth war gravestones. Sacred to the memory of my dear husband, Frederick Oscar Wells, who died the 20th of November 1918. Sorry, had to sneeze. 1918, aged 30 years. Then you've got Charles Hayes, beloved husband of Elizabeth Ann Hayes. Then you've got Elizabeth Ann Hayes. In loving memory of Private William Frederick Barrand, 6 Bedfords, who died from the effects of gas poisoning at, I think, something, Affrington Military Hospital. September the 17th, 1918, aged 20 years. Then you've got Edward Barrand, father of the above, and Elizabeth Barrand, who was his mother. In loving memory of my dear husband, Bandsman Douglas Turnham, RF, wounded at Deville Wood, 16th of September 1916, died 3rd of August 1918, aged 37 years. 7/2313, Private E.A. Sleeman, NZ Canterbury Regiment, so that's the New Zealand Canterbury Regiment, 4th of November 1916, age 28. 1490, Private Walter Venier, 8th BN Canadian Infantry, 18th of September 1915, aged 39. Oh look, this man's got one of the ceramic poppies that we saw at the Tower of London a few years back. Buried elsewhere in this cemetery, 6446401, Sergeant C.E. Mears, Royal Fusiliers, 12th of July 1921. (19601) Private John Edwards, 10th BN Canadian Infantry, 2nd of May 1916, aged 33. Rest in peace. And you've got 71931, Sapper W. McCarthy, Canadian Engineers, 27th of November 1916. 161060, Private C.H. Hicks, 31st BN Canadian Infantry, 24th of December 1916, aged 19. Rest in peace. In loving memory of my dear husband, Leonard Thomas Pearson. Something of County of London. (1911 to 1916), who died as the result of illness contracted through exposure while on duty with his regiment. August the something 1918, aged 30 years. It's very worn, I'm afraid. And you've got in loving memory of my dear husband, Robert Henry Melville, 5th Royal Fusiliers, who died from wounds while serving his country, March the 28th 1916, aged 29 years. And you've got also Robert Thomas Melville, father of the above, and Ellen Mansfield Melville, wife of the above, so he's buried with his parents. In loving memory of my dear husband, Sergeant Henry Dakin Jostling, 123 Heavy Battery RGA, who died in Sheffield Hospital from wounds received at Hill 60 on August the 9th 1915, aged 36 years. He gave his life in rescuing his comrade. Greater love hath no man than a man that lay down his life for his friend. Another private grave. In loving memory of our dearly beloved sons, 34587 Private Alfred Victor Cross, 1st Battalion Royal Sussex Regiment, who departed this life 18th of September 1919 at Rugeley Camp in Staffordshire in his 21st year, and Frederick James Cross, late Sergeant MGC, who fell asleep 24th of June 1920 in his 28th year. And then you've also got Alice Cross, dearly beloved mother of the above. They're buried with their mum. (29395) Private J. Torrance, 16th BN Canadian Infantry, 15th of June 1915, aged 20. Then you've got 439720 Private T. Ringrose, 52nd BN Canadian Infantry, 23rd of October 1916, aged 26. Gone but not forgotten. Wife. 437931, Private TGB Champion, 2nd BN Canadian Infantry, 2nd of October 1916, aged 25 years. And that's all the graves and memorials of our war heroes covered, and each one of them's a hero to me. And if I can find anything on Lieutenant Francis Beacroft Smith Military Cross online, you'll see that now. If not, then I hope you all found this interesting, and thank you for watching. And doing my research into Francis Beacroft Smith, I was able to find out quite a lot about him, including this image. Amongst these 5 men is the face of Francis Beacroft Smith. Unfortunately, we don't know who is who because the photo description doesn't say who is who, but he is amongst these 5 men. And this is an RFC cap badge, Royal Flying Corps, and that's what it was known as before it became the RAF, the Royal Air Force as we know it today. And here is the RFC, or the RAF, the men thereof, up in action in the skies, and it was a very intrepid and dangerous business in these old biplanes. And I was able to find this information out on a family history forum that someone shared information about Francis. Francis Beacroft Smith, or some records say Francis Beacroft Gow Smith, was born on the 15th of October 1893 at Dunoon, the son of George Bell Smith. Frank had a varied service, started in the RGA, then the RNVR. After being wounded, he was moved to the RAF. He died as a result of an air accident on the ground. The information, this is what the person's put, the information that clinched this for me was his civil occupation. He was employed by the Oakbank Oil Company from 1909 to 1914 as a technical chemist. This is the link with Kirk Newton and East Calder. He is also on the Dunoon Memorial, and the person's put, I still need to see if there is an RGA record. However, naval records give us information that he did serve in the RGA, and then they've put, thought I was going to have to wait to meet Frank and get his information in the next world. There's some original records below. I can't read much of the top bits, and the writing is pretty ropey, but the middle one, it's got casualties, honours and awards. And Military Cross, gazetted July the 19th, 1917, died of wounds on 28th of the 5th, 1918. And here we have Francis Beacroft Smith, Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, number 54 Training Depot Station, 2nd Reserve Battalion, attached RAF, Acting Lieutenant, awards was the Military Cross, death date 28th of May 1918, killed as a result of an airplane accident at number 54 Training Depot Station, RAF Fairlop. Burial, the City of London Cemetery, Manor Park in Essex. Commissioned Temporary Sub-Lieutenant, RNVR, 29th of the 10th, 1915. Draft for BEF Physical Training Instructor, 5th of the 12th, 1916. Joined Drake Battalion on the 14th of the 12th, 1916. 23rd of the 4th, 1917. GSW, Legs and Shoulders, slight invalided to the UK, 25th of the 4th, 1917. Acting Lieutenant, RNVR, 29th of the 9th, 1917, to the RAF Reading, 26th of the 3rd, 1918. Ex-gunner of the 1st Lowland Royal Garrison Artillery Heavy Battery. And it's got notes. Awarded the MC, London Gazette, 18th of the 7th, 1917, page 7244, for conspicuous gallantry during an attack when leading his men. Although shot 3 times, he continued with great dash and determination to advance, bayoneting 3 of the enemy, refusing to retire until ordered to do so. Next of kin and home address, Father George Bell Smith, Newton, in Ellen, Argyllshire. And this is what Frank's grave looked like not too many years ago, and it was nice and clean. And this is the military cross that he would have been awarded. Not his exact one, but this is what it would have looked like. And for one last time, the face somewhere of Francis Beacroft Smith.